today the architect really is not even expected to do everything from his own mind. There are so many things to be done, which and many other things, many other players, many other intelligent people contribute to the creation of a building. And if architect was to be the one who's really concerned with having the building, having the right building in the right place at the right time, all of it is not architect's work. So really speaking, it is not just the architect who has to work with his own mind. Now, on the other hand, when we think of what Vitruvius said, then of course we have to remember at which time Vitruvius said it. You know, Vitruvius said all these things at a time when probably so many professions which we now see today were not there. And probably there were just two kinds of professions. Either you were fighting and therefore you were in the military profession, or you were in the civil profession and probably collecting taxes. And therefore, when you did become somebody who was creating something, all Vitruvius was saying that this person has to be a good man. This person has to be an intelligent man. And if you see all the things that he describes, I think we can say the same thing about any professional today.
Yes.
Even if we have to talk about a doctor, well, yes, the doctor has to have some sketching skills and has to have all these other skills too. So in reality, I don't think that what Vitruvius is describing is something we have to take on as our speciality. It's something which every normal, intelligent, civil person who is thinking of contributing to society must have to do their work properly and to be able to situate their work properly. It's one thing to know your work very well and to be able to do it very well, but then the question is to whom you do it for and how you do it at the time where it's required. And that needs a connect which is beyond the, you can say, the very narrow realm of your let's say expertise, what you call your domain. So you have to have some kind of understanding beyond your domain as well. And I think that remains our, let's say, leitmotif for what good education should be, and therefore what good architecture education should be.
Dr. Harimohan Pillai, can you opine on this?
I want to live in the present moment and worry rather than look at the past, or we don't know what is going to happen in future, because right now we are in a big soup, all of us. That's why we are together today, sitting and thinking and talking. So one important question which arises today is, are our graduates employable? That is, what are the challenges we are facing in profession and how an educational institution can address these challenges to bridge the gap between academia and industry. This has been always been our problem, and this will continue to be our problem because of the present state of affairs. Are our graduates employable? But then why do we need to train them again in fundamentals all over again when they come to office? This has been my experience. I don't know how it is with most architects. When fresh graduates come to the office, even if they are excellent at presentation and they come with fantastic thesis and drawings, we find that we have to train them all over again. What could be the reason after attending 5 years of education if we have to train them all over again to understand some fundamentals of practical, common sense based work which happens, which is called architecture? But as I see it, no school has a curriculum suited for a holistic view to teach design as a very practically executable project. Right from first year to final year, no project is treated as a practical project. They're all dream projects. Structure, construction, fundamentals, materials knowledge, building services, these are the subjects. They're all taught in a very linear manner with no connection to the actual design which is there on the drawing board or in the computer. There is no relationship of these subjects to the design which they are attempting. Whereas the moment you enter into profession, all these subjects have connect with the design that you are attempting. So there is a big disconnect in academic world and in the professional world.
Yeah, other experts should opine on this. Till the time we can take views of Jeet Kumar Gupta, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Madhura. I think, Madhura, you raised a very fundamental question that what basically architect must know, and that's what, Vitruvius was trying to define, and that's what Mr. Pillai was trying to, explain, that people coming out of the architectural institution even do not know the principles, on the basis what sustains an architecture. And that's what, I think it will be relevant to state what and repeat what Wittevars was trying to say. He said, that we must, focus on proportions. And he said the human body is the best, creation by the God, which defines these kind of proportion, So human body and the proportion, they are the, two basic elements which architects must know and understand when using the architecture. Thirdly, he said, that building must be structurally stable. Number two, they should be, have utility. And thirdly, they must have the beauty. So three fundamentals, of a structure, because architects are all involved in creating structures and buildings throughout their life, And that's the reason the basic credibility of any building lies in that it has stability to withstand any kind of disaster. Number two, it has all the utility for which is being designed, And thirdly, it fulfills and meets the basic fundamentals of aesthetics, Secondly, what Wittevars was trying to say, who's an architect, He's categorically said the architect must be a balance of theory and practical, Theory is intellectual grasp of a subject, and practical is the applied part of that, So therefore, he says any architect who's purely, practical, doesn't know the theoretical background, and the person who's a, only theoretical and doesn't know the practical can never make a good architect. So architect for him has to be a mix of a person who has a theoretical knowledge, what goes into making of a building, and secondly, and he can apply that knowledge to make sure the building come to those standards of, structure, utility, and, beauty. But let me explain. I think as architects, we are losing a grasp, that we are thinking buildings are just like dead entities. I think buildings are living entities. We must understand, 80% of the human life is spent within the four walls of the building. So buildings become the major determinant of quality of life, major determinant of what happens around that. And since we are passing through a very, difficult era and difficult situation, we should understand buildings have dualities and contradiction. If they are providing the best kind of option, they are also making you sick also if they are not designed. And then building are consumers of energy and resources, and that's what education of architect and the relevance of architects and architecture remains very, very critical if we are to hit the world and achieve the sustainable development goal of 11. That's to make the world sustainable. I think the facts and the ideas narrated by Wittevars still remain relevant, To what extent we can use them in the present context, that is what we need our education to be oriented. The education need to be focused, and education to take forward those kind of things, considering the present requirement of our living, working, etc. Thank you. I'll stop it.
So for this first opening remarks, I have seen the mixed comments from all the experts. Yes, I understand that the context had changed and we have to think about the context. But similarly, I think the question was related to, should architect be a specialist or all-rounder? That was the question asked to the panel. So my next question goes to, Dr. Harimohan Pillai. Do our institutions still value this well-rounded education?
Our pedagogy hasn't changed for years together. Let us take a look at the way we have been teaching and from where we have taken the syllabus. It was first proposed by RIBA as a 5.5-year course long ago, which was adopted by our Indian education institutions starting with JJ College. From 5.5 years, it became 5-year course. Somewhere in between 6 months training is included. But most of the time, these 5 years is devoted only to learning theory. As Professor Jeet said just now, there has to be an architect should have a well-rounded personality of both theory and practice. But in 5 years, most of the time, the students are learning only theory with hardly any connect with the practical world. We do send them for 6 months training, but sometimes we have seen that that is not enough. So pedagogy should have changed in 1990s. We missed the bus because it is in the 1990s that the digital. Yeah, so when the digital world came, we totally ignored. I remember CAD was banned in most School of Architecture and universities. You are not supposed to use AutoCAD. You have to work on drawing board. And whereas the industry took to CAD, all the offices were computerized, but schools of architecture were adamant in not training in digital world. It took a long time. Even today, I have heard that there are many schools of architecture where the use of computer is banned in first year, as if it is important to keep learning on drawing board so that you can become an architect. Now, see, we have come a long way in technology, in making technology the interface between thinking and execution. You see, look at what an architect was 1000 years ago. How much time one fellow will take to become an architect? Several years, somebody has to work under a master builder to qualify himself as a builder. For several years, you work as an apprentice. Now we have made it into a 5-year course, but still we don't learn anything because there is no practical test to the whatever learning we are giving to the students in the college. So I have a suggestion. Of course, this could be thinking out of hat or whatever. Suggestion is that look at the way the numbers are increasing in schools of architecture and number of students who are joining. As if we need so many architects, as if all of them are capable of becoming architects. We never question these things.
Okay. Yes, you mean to say we have to think of the technology in present architectural education and then
Maria, that is the attitude of
balance.
Giving admission. Yes. So one possibility is duration could be made 3 years with a certificate. And then unless you work for 2 years, come with a practical certificate, you will not be given license to practice. So everything can be taught in 3 years. You give a BA like a BA or BSc degree to anybody who joins. So that satisfies all the entire population which wants to become architect, that you learn about architecture, but you can't practice architecture till you work for at least 2 years under an architect or on construction site, understanding the reality making of a building. Building is not simply a good looking perspective or a good looking presentation on computer. Building is a reality, and that is what nobody knows as a fresh graduate, that building is actually a reality out there on the construction site. Unless you learn that, there is no way you can practice as an architect. So if the course can be made 3 years theory followed by 2 or any number of years of practical experience, before you appear for a licensing examination by the Council of Architecture or whatever.
Yes. Can we have the views of Dr. Anuradha on this?
Yeah, Dr. Pillai, I think that's a fair point. I think what you're talking about, the regulation of who or who should not become an architect, I think the idea of a 3+2 degree is something that a lot of European and a lot of universities in the UK have taken it up. But it's not just to do with regulating the quality of graduates who are coming out. Because in the end, see, I think it's a bit dangerous to keep thinking of ourselves as gatekeepers. It is also in the favor of a student who's deciding that after 3 years that I'm interested in architecture, but I don't want to become a practitioner in the strictest sense of the word, in which I'm able to work on site, understand the technicalities. I don't really want to practice in the industry. I want to practice perhaps as a journalist, perhaps as a writer, as a researcher, as a critic, as a graphics designer, So I think that idea is really good. And I think at some point we also have to put our students at par with the rest of the world, where, at this point in time, I'm just saying because we know a lot of students going overseas for studies and they're exactly 2 years behind everybody else because they're doing a 5-year degree. Whereas all other students have done a 3+2 masters and they're graduated with a master's. So Indian students are already 2 years behind. The point is that 3+2 is already embedded into our curriculum. What Dr. Pillai is saying is already there. There's a basic degree. There's the first 3 years of the basic degree is there, and there's a +2, which is an advanced degree. I think that proposition. I think that's something that we should take very seriously, not just in favor of the profession, but also in favor of the student who gets an exit pathway, who's not being driven down a tunnel. Yeah?
Yes,
What do you think?
yes, I agree with you. Yes.
Professor Manoj Mathur, what are your views on this? The degree, duration of degree, it should be integrated 3+2, or what is your say on duration of this course? Professor Manoj Mathur. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to keep in mind what the course is for. So I think if we go by the idea of at the end of the 5 years course, what happens? We have to remember that at the moment, what happens is that you actually become a titled architect. You automatically become an architect with the title of architect. Okay, and you get registered with the council, and thereby you come under the regulation of the council. Whereas you have to also keep in mind that if you're really interested in architecture, and if you really want to do designs of buildings, and you really want to build buildings, and you want to create buildings, and you want to dream buildings, it is settled that you don't need to do this BArch degree. You can still do it without having the BArch degree. I think this is a very important point that we have to kind of get into our heads. Okay, so that if you really are interested in creating designs of buildings, you do not need to undergo a graduation in architecture. You can do it. You may not be called an architect. Okay, you may be called anything. You may be called a building designer. You may be called a designer. You might be called a consultant. You can be called anything. You will not only, I mean, you'll have to live with not being called an architect, but you can do exactly what you please. On the other hand, when you become an architect, then you can't do exactly what you please. Then you have to do lots of things which the council says you should do. Okay, now here the idea of when this person who has joined architecture discovers that that person does not want to do architecture and therefore needs to quit. I think the idea of not doing architecture is always open, even after doing your 5 years of BArch and getting registered. If you want to, the idea of not doing architecture is always there. So I don't think that is a problem anywhere. The idea that we have to offer this choice of not doing architecture, I think the mistake we make always is that we think that if you have done the 5 years of BArch, then you can only do architecture. And that's the big mistake. And that's the propagation of this idea is what is creating all the problems. The people who are armed with this degree and therefore think that they should be registered and find that when there is not so much of architecture required or architects' services required, as Hari has just mentioned, they said, oh, where are the jobs for us? There's no work for us. The point is that who says that this is the only work you can do? There are hundreds of other things you can do and you can do well. So the idea that you educate yourself for something and that becomes your livelihood, I think this is a fallacious idea. It doesn't exist anywhere in the world. Architecture, the way it has been conceived, you know, this all-round education that we talk about, that Jeet sir just told us very, very sweetly about being the theoretical side and the practical side and how they do combine. This is such a core value and it can be applied to anything. Today, it just happens to be the realm of architecture or the discipline of architecture where we learn to do this. Other disciplines have, you can say, either not come up to this level or actually have discarded this as being a value. And they're rediscovering it. But in architecture, we still have it. And I think it's a good thing. All we need to do is we need to propagate the idea of what this value really is. Is it only for just making buildings? Or it can be applied to so many other things. So
Yes.
when you say whether these values are there in our institution, I would say the values are probably not understood properly. We teach all these things in our institutions without understanding what's the value, and therefore all the education goes to waste. And that's why we land up in the situation that Hari is talking about, that when people actually join the profession of architecture, they have to be retrained to actually do it.
So can we say that, like we had discussed, all the speakers very well said that what should be the duration and what should be the specialization. Like in 5 years till 3 years, we can give the basic knowledge of what architecture is. And as per the interest of the students, then we can train them later in 2 years about what they want to be in specialized field. So I think long back, council has also had this provision. Like after 3rd year, they have opened the field of interior design and then landscape, and then they a degree like BArch in interior design or BArch in landscape. So we have to revisit and rethink this model in architectural education again.
I think you are very right. The idea, as we all of us seem to be on the same page here, that 3 years is good enough to teach all the basics. So, and as Anuradha said quite in the beginning, that no education actually is an end. Education just continues. So we have to think of graduation as a graduation. It's a step. Okay, it's just something which, okay, for now you take the first step, and then you probably keep on taking your steps as you go further. Education is lifelong. Okay, so as far as taking the first step is concerned, I think all of us here seem to agree that 3 years is just about fine.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, it is.
Yes. Dr. Pillai, do you want to say something on this?
Yes, definitely, because we have to also see the age of the children who join. They become impatient in 3 years. We don't seem to be looking at the what goes on in the mind of the student who joins. Most of the graduation courses are 3 years long, or at the most 4 year long, and they are also growing up. They want to be out there in the world, and we keep them for another 2 years in college, and it is too late. By the time they.
Architect Jagdeep sir, can you hear us?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Now you can.
Yes, now we need your views. We need
You
your views now.
Okay.
Yes.
Coming back, I mean, I missed a bit of the conversation, but I was just thinking that we mentioned about the historical aspects, and the historical aspects were more Western, whereas as Dr. Madhura said about the Vishwakarma lines. Anyway, that is in the past. Now, what are we doing? We are doing, as Dr. Haribon just now said, about 3 years. 3 years, all the students, at least many students, feel that they are already architects and they're just waiting for another 2 years for getting the formal degree. But actually speaking, that's a good idea. 3 years should be the basic course. Those who want to further study can join further 2 years, get a formal degree. 3 years could be the basic barefoot architect. Let's put it that way. And regarding, I think there were some other points regarding so many professionals working on a building, but they are more or less for bigger buildings, bigger complexes. Whereas most of our constructions are 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom units, not bedroom, but units, tenement. For that, we don't need HVAC specialists. We don't need plumbing specialists. We just need an architect. Almost all the buildings just now in informal settlements are built without architecture. So we are actually building for whom? We are designing for whom? In our days, at least I'm sure, only 30 years ago, we were told architecture is not taught, it's learned. But what is that architecture? What is there to be learned? We have to learn that architecture is simply no formal definition, but to create order from chaos. That is to say, a blank paper we have, just put together our say units, and it is more or less orderly. That's why we call them informal slums. They are just totally chaotic, and they are glorified, I'm sorry to say, by calling them organic. We don't call anything organic. A fungus is also organic, which is not good, right? Because there are good funguses, but we don't want to have inorganic structures. We want to have proper, decent structures, humane habitat. That's called humane habitat. Anyway, 5 years is sufficient only to develop the formal thoughts, not skills. Our thinking, etc., comes within. It cannot be taught. It's learned. So anyway, I'll go ahead later on.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we have discussed about the first thing is that how the architect should be. It should be he should be either a specialist or he should be all-rounder. Then we have discussed about the duration of the course. It should be of 3 years or 5 years or integrated. Now, can I ask the question, because initially Professor Manoj Mathur has said that Vitreous has said this long back, but we have to think of today's context, how the architectural education is taking shape. So how technology is affecting architectural education? This question, Professor Jeet, yes.
If you don't mind. Technology, as again Dr. Harimon had mentioned about the computer skills. Computer is just a tool like paper, pencil. Like in the old days, we had stick on mud. We just scribbled something on the mud and became whatever the building. No, I mean the building in those days. Then it became charcoal on paper, charcoal on stone, etc., etc. Then pencil on paper, then pen on paper. Now it is the computer pen on the computer screen. So these are just tools. We can teach any tool, but they are only going to aid our final product. They are not going to give the final product. This is what I think.
Yes, sir. Jeet Kumar Gupta.
I think the education has to be looked holistically, and we have to look not only the persons who are joining. I think the Pentagon, which constitutes the architectural education, the Pentagon of architectural education comprises of students, the teachers, the institutions, then regulator authorities, and the infrastructure. I think they collectively shape the quality of the manpower that basically ultimately come out to be architects. First and foremost is what kind of intake we have. We are not sure who is going to become an architect. Are we, having majority of the people who are left over and joining this? I think that is where we have to see if the quality of intake is checked. That is only persons who are, relevant, who understand and who are interested in architecture. They are allowed to join. I think half of the problem is solved. Like you have to go to engineering, you have to do physics, chemistry, maths. You have to go to medicine. You have to do biology and botany. Here, at the level of 10, +1 and +2, you are trained. You are always working before you have to get into this field. In architecture, we don't have that kind of system. We are saying that here we were saying arts can come, science can come. We are only debating art or science. I think there is now time that we define an agenda. If somebody wants to join architecture, he at least understands that he is going in a particular field. And then I think for that, at the level of 10 + 1 and 2, there could be an option like botany, biology, and physics, chemistry, maths. There could be, subjects relevant to architecture, basics, which can be introduced at +1 and +2 level, so that student, before he goes into architecture, he should opt for that, go for the aptitude test, and then get into that. So that is one way where we need to see that only people, in majority of cases, that those who are interested, they join as, choice, not by a compulsion. That's what we have to be very clear. Secondly, the issue remains that how we are treating education, architectural education. We have, they say, 573 architectural institution, and you can see how they are mushroom, more than 20,000 students. That is the sanction intake. I'm taking an average of 40, there are 120, how we are able to manage those 20,000 in year black for 5 years, and the norms of, COA says 1:10, you have 10,000 regular teacher to be available for that, where they are going to come from. I think that mushrooming of institution. Number two, the intake of the students, then the students joining not by choice but by compulsion. Then this is being treated as a business. Think from 4 years you are having 5 year. A person is paying fees for 5 years. And secondly, you don't require much of infrastructure that has its own implication. I think that needs to be taken care of if the education has to become more focused. But the Mr. Pillai was raising a very relevant question: what kind of education we are imparting, what kind of training we are providing. I think we're all static. We are
Sir, actually, yeah. This was the question, that how technology is affecting our education.
In fact,
And I think I want
that's what
your
I come.
views on. Yeah.
I will come on this. I think we have to understand globally. We have to produce people who are globally competitive. And globally, if you see the good practices which are being adopted by the best institution in the world, they are driven by technology. I can tell you, you have seen how the technology helps in student getting connected, but there are certain limitations. Like we have not been able to teach design in a particular fashion, but I think they will be overcome. I'm just quoting an example. The kind of the video has been made use an essential element of architectural teaching and learning, and this has proved, that this is, this video has made this teaching and learning very, very, easy and very good, because it bridges the gap between academics and practice. It creates different skill sets. It creates capacity, that you can understand what happens on the ground. It makes students study the anatomy of building. And what they have done is they have asked their institution, global best institution, they're asking the student to go and document a building by a video, then analyze it and then explain it. And that makes student understand the genesis, what goes into making of a building, what goes into designing of a building, how the spaces are being rationalized, the kind of technology they have been using. And I think video has done what we have not been able to understand, because they are students themselves are going, documenting the building, and then analyzing it, and then presenting their case study. I think that made a great sense. So video and technology, I think they are the two words, if we have to produce architects who are globally competitive, we cannot run on our drawing board of elephant size, so that student is working there, and then he is not able to do justice, because he has his own limitation of understanding and the context what happening over the world. I think technology has a much greater role, and I think if the Indian architecture has to be competitive,
Yes.
technology has to be embedded as part.
Yes, sir. Architect Jagdeep, sir, you want to say something?
Yeah. Actually, the thing is, in technology, we should use the technology and not let the technology use us. Because if we are going to just be dependent on computers, we have to just. I mean, computers is, as I told you earlier, it is just a tool to assist in the drawing. It is not a designing tool. And furthermore, anybody can use this tool now, because it's not only for architecture graduates. I don't know, you must be also aware now, the photocopying shops where all our thesis projects are printed, etc., they are giving different modules. Okay, you want airport, you want hospital, you want this, you want that, and it's all ready. And if it's not ready, he will adjust it on the spot. Say if it's not in Raipur, it's in Pune. He will place it in Pune for you, etc. So we are abusing this technology. We are not using it. We are also misusing it, and anybody can be a technologist. We should not actually teach computers in college. We should teach how to use the computer, how to use a drawing. This is what
Yes,
I
yes.
think.
Yeah.
It was
Yes.
I absolutely agree with you, sir, that in Xerox shops, there are list of people who are ready to give ready-made pieces. And this is a very alarming situation in architecture education. Yes, sir,
they are
Harimohan
also
Pillai.
architects now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. See, technology has always affected not only the architecture as a profession,
Yeah.
but education. See, from the times of using hammer and chisel to today's computer, technology affects the way we produce buildings or we imagine. But let us look at how it affects education as of today and what is our role as a teacher. That is very important. What is our role as a, if at all we are teaching architecture, what is our role in appropriate use of technology for education purposes? I'll give you a simple example. When this lockdown was announced 2 months, I was nowhere because I travel a lot. I go to colleges. No, I am just so I started a small workshop online, and in which some 10-15 students whom I have never met enrolled from different parts of it. I was surprised to see the way the students are geared to make use of technology learning process. I am learning from them. We are simply sharing the way we are working right now. We are screen sharing. We are looking at each other. I am using this kind of platform to interact with them. We use BIM model. All of us work on the design together, make changes, share with each other, screen share. So this is use of at least 10 students have learned by working with me. I have learned by working with them on technology applications in developing architecture. On a day-to-day basis, I am putting them on my website. I'm surprised how well prepared the present day students are in use of technology. So somewhere we teachers are lagging behind. This is a wonderful opportunity for us when we are away from our actual workplace, but sitting at home to keep in touch with our students, work with them online in the virtual world using technology so that we can educate them and we can also learn. So, and this is going to open up wonderful new possibilities. Look at how buildings are getting 3D printed now.
Yes.
Where will we will be when all parts of a building will get 3D printed? Not only that, these days there are something called expert systems in computer programming where you have to write a program and a building will be made in the virtual world. Just have to write a program. So such expert systems are also existing, but unfortunately neither architecture teachers have upgraded themselves to learning computer or digital applications, using this to our benefit, our advantage, to understand our own profession. There's a big gap in understand how to use technology. See, by the way, this very popular software for SketchUp was created by two architects, two Holland-based architects. They never even knew that this would become a worldwide use phenomenon. It was free and downloadable in 2005. Nobody ever knew about these two architects. Now nobody knows the names of those two architects because this software is exactly the way an architect thinks.
Yes, yes, sir.
So very
Yes.
few architects have got into this, putting your mind into a machine. Architects must learn how to put your mind into the machine so that others can see your mind. Till now we were using drawing. Today this technology allows us.
Yes, sir.
It is up
True.
to us to learn computer programming, learn different languages, and comfort zone of using technology for education as well. It's up to us. We are lagging behind. That's what I think.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Anuradha, you want to say something?
I was going to add to what Dr. Pillai is already saying at the outset about the fact that the beginning of architecture is the beginning of the use of technology. Technology and architecture are synonymous. So the question whether we should embrace technology can't really be answered because the answer is yes, it's already been answered. But for me, as an academic, I think the question really that sort of intrigues me, and the point is that in an academy, we're all of different generations. So it's an intergenerational space where, and I'm more curious about what is the fear and skepticism that each of us always carry with us and perhaps inherit from different generations, and we pass it on, this fear that abhi nahi, we'll do it later, and if you do CAD at this standard, this will happen. If you do rendering at this standard, this will happen. SketchUp karoge to aisa hoga. Making a model by hand is also a technology as much as is using a laser cutter. If you're designing a terrible building, your laser cuts will be terrible. I mean, it's not like you can just decorate and dress it up. Laser cutter is not a shortcut. Let them use laser cutter. Let them use 3D printing. It's a rubbish building. It's a rubbish building. So I think I'm more curious as academics, how do we integrate that without the worry, the fear, and the skepticism? I think industry is a lot more adaptable and a lot more with it. I think as academies, we tend to be a bit more. I mean, I'm saying that as somebody who's worked across generations. I graduated in 1998, and I've seen that change. I was at the cusp of that, the CAD generation. I think the question about skepticism and fear of technology, where does it come from? Because very soon the technology becomes quite sort of everyday, like Zoom, where it was like, no, we cannot do this on Zoom, but now we're doing everyday webinars. It's the new normal. The question is, what is the source of this fear and the skepticism? So I was just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I agree with all the views of experts. And I think, as rightly said, that digital technology, like in the form of CAD or all software, these are just the tools. And many times we also listen from the students that when they are submitting their CV to the offices, the software skills are must. Otherwise, office will not take you. So this is also the concern for us, that only the software skills are not required, but they need to acquire the design skills first, and then they need to support design skills with the technology. And I think in this pandemic, we all have learned to use technology, and change is the only permanent thing in life, and we have to change as per the technology. So my next question is, what is the role of virtual reality and augmented reality in architectural field, and that too specifically in architectural design? Will it play a role? Virtual reality and augmented reality.
I think.
Yes, sir.
Have you experienced it? If you experience it, you will say, if you experience it, virtual reality and augmented reality, if you participate in it, you will raise your hand and say, yes, I want it. You will say,
yes.
You will say that I want it. I want to use it, because that will give you the idea of how you can use it. Because I have experienced it. I have worked with it. It is fascinating. I am a 1979 graduate when the word computer was not even heard. We learned Fortran programming as an elective subject in college, in IIT. And today, when I experienced this, I wanted to learn it. I learned, I used, I made a virtual model and moved my objects in that virtual world using this technique. And I was so fascinated. And I'm wondering that I may not last for another 10, 15, 20 years, but what the future will do with all these technologies. Fascinating things will happen. So, I mean, these are the realities which we have to take and move forward. We have to do research into this. Somebody has given us the virtual technology. It is up to us architects to do research in this, how we can best utilize this to understand design, to experience. Today we are only doing visual virtual technology. What if smell comes into the project? Smell as a factor. It is possible. There's a lot of research going on how to create smell emanating from an image. It will happen. It will happen. I'm 100% sure it will happen. Smell emanating, temperature changing around you because of an image. We put air conditioner around us. Tomorrow your monitor may give you comfort. Today monitor is giving us radiation, but technology is moving very, very fast. Science and technology is moving much faster than our imagination. And when that happens, we have to keep pace with all these things. It was science fiction in 1979 to imagine that there could be something called a remote. Only James Bond could do it in my school days and my college days. But today, it's not science fiction. So if today's science fiction is tomorrow's reality, so architecture has to always work within the domain of science fiction and make it a reality. Science, technology, architecture, they're all linked together because architecture is all pervasive. People have to live in built forms and spaces. And it is, to me, architecture is a high form of technology. It is not just art, or it's pure science and technology. But of course, if it is beautiful, aesthetically good, wonderful. But it is high form of technology, architectural spaces, which is getting proven day by day because of technology advancement. We can see Zaha Hadid, architect, is a classic example of visionary use of technology for creating built form. A classic example of one of those pioneers who there could be many hundreds of Zaha Hadids in this world. I mean, I'm sure, because that will happen in future. A lot of problems of sustainability related problems will be solved more by use of technology than by people's behavior. People's behavioral change will not bring in sustainability, but technology will definitely bring in sustainability elements in our day-to-day lifestyle. You see, so we have to embrace these things as they come and use our own intelligence to understand the role of technology in architecture, design, and execution. That's it. Thank you.
Yes. Any other expert want to opine on this?
In fact, virtual reality was always in existence. It is not that's a new thing. It has now technology has taken over. Earlier you will find all our masters, whenever they will do a project, they first get the model made of that. They'll try to study. They'll try to study the spaces. I still remember in '60 when Corbusier was planning the assembly of Punjab, he put the hyperbolic paraboloid, that's the water cooling tower of these thermal plants. He wanted to use as the element for creating the assembly. He was not sure, and no architect was sure, because they could not even dissect and have the section drawn. What Corbusier did, he brought there was a modeler. He created that hyperbolic paraboloid in plaster of Paris. The first time it was created. If you see the history of Corbusier, he's standing with that modeler, when that is hyperbolic paraboloid is created. And then he calls all the architects, local architects, look, this is the shape I am asking for, in which the assembly would be located. And he said, this is the shape which he flew, when he was doing for Ahmedabad, that Sarabhai house, everything, then he flew over that cooling water tower of this thermal plants, and he came with the idea, and he said, this is the best structure, He proved it because of the, thinness, and because of he wanted to have the light directly from the sun to the assembly. So that was the option. So I think, this virtual reality is one added advantage with the architect, so that he can foresee the mistake, tomorrow. He can foresee just now. And secondly, if he wants to make the building sustainable, if he wants to see what is the behavior with respect to sun and the performance of the building, he wants to cut down the load of ACs, everything, air conditioning. I think ASHRAE and everything, they are modulating, and they are, they're taking those building, simulating that building through technology. And there are now methods available. You can cut down your AC load by 80%, and you can make this building sustainable. And that's only possible through technology and virtual reality. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Jagdeep, sir.
Okay, a little contrary view. Technology, as I said, we should not let technology use us. Example, we are told the Apollo moonshots, the landing was done by the Americans in '68 or whenever, using that technology, which was a little basic. Today, our technology is 50 years beyond that, and still the next moonshot hasn't come. So I don't understand how we are able to advance in technology but not yet reach the moon, for example. So we have to use the technology, yes, but we can't let it use us. And regarding the modeling, of course, apart from the plaster of Paris, we are always doing basic design in modeling only. In plaster of Paris, we are using cardboard, we are using all kinds of normal materials. Virtual reality, Dr. Haribon, I have not experienced, but what architects are, yes, experts, not experts, but they are experienced in various things. So technology we should use, but we should not misuse.
Yes, sir. I agree with all the views. I think there are mixed views of the experts, but many times it questions that it is not the thing that now technology had changed or now technology has changed the architectural education. When we look at our ancient buildings like Hawa Mahal and then Jantar Mantar, the Jaipur example, see the precision, and without the help of technology, it is not possible. So nowadays, I think, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Pillai, there is a need to do a research, as this AR and VR is also the future of architectural education, and it is interdisciplinary. So we need to do the research, and we need to formulate the team of architects, computer engineers, and psychology. So we need to do the research in this field, and we have to take this technique ahead. So can we move to the next part of this panel discussion, and which is very important. The COVID-19 pandemic has transformed how we work around the world. And in the wake of growing coronavirus outbreak, all architectural institutions moved to online teaching learning, and all architects are working from home. So what changes you envisage in the teaching learning of architectural education in the COVID-19 scenario? Should it be made integral part of future architectural education also? This question is for all the experts. I think we can start with Professor Manoj Mathur.
Yeah, okay. So the question of what happens to architectural education in the post-COVID world. Let's say we are in the present COVID world at the moment, and we are experiencing it right now, and we have already discovered that our college buildings are redundant. Okay, that we can actually do almost everything online. So yes, there are difficulties with teachers trying to take lectures online and trying to take assignments online. And well, the answer to that would be that why does every teacher need to take a lecture? There are fantastic lectures for everything by the best teachers of that subject, and they are available anyway to the students. So why do we have to have teachers for all these subjects individually in every college? You know, we have just last week we have done the council has done a course for teaching history. Now, I'm sure all these people who would have trained in teaching history can just collectively bring out the best possible course in history. And then every college can go through, every student can go through that course instead of having every teacher teach their version of history. So as far as learning from the computer is concerned, learning online is concerned, and that computer, I don't mean necessarily your laptop computer, it's something which is handheld, something which is on your phone, and that's the easiest way to do it, and that's how it should be done. So I think in that sense, we have already crossed the Rubicon. I mean, we are already there. We are already there in the virtual world. So all of our, or let's say, a lot of our teaching can go onto the digital platform. Then we have the question that in architecture, we have this very strange thing which is called the studio. Okay, and people are expressing, again, as Anuradha said, this fear of technology. How can studio happen online? But there again, my personal experience is, and as Hari has also described it again, is that studio can just as well be done online and probably better.
Yes.
Because
yes,
in the real studio, there are a lot of other difficulties. There are difficulties of students hogging the teacher's time, of shy students not coming up in front, of students who stay in the background and then suddenly come up with something. And most importantly, of there not being much of discussion and criticism in the studio at all, because you're told most of the time that you have to do this and you have to do this, and this is the way to do it, and that's the way to do it. And if you do it like that, then that's how you pass. But when you go online, you have the freedom of getting out of the time slot. When you have the freedom of getting out of the time slot, then the way you address the students, you have the choice. You can address them as a group, you can address them individually, you can address them at the time when they are really feeling that they need you. And I think the most important thing is always that. Our students, by whatever, let's go not go into that, another discussion. Our students are always doing their best work at 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay? That's not because they have woken up at 3:30. they are going to sleep.
They have not slept. They have not slept. Yeah.
They have not. And that is the time when they need you. Okay?
Yes. So now it is possible. Now it is possible. Possible.
I hope not.
That's right.
You know, that is a change.
We should
That
hold
is a big
studios
change which has
at 4
happened because of
o'clock in the
COVID.
I think
Whole day sleep, studios 4 o'clock in the morning. The 4 o'clock in the morning work, the 4 o'clock in the morning work is due to the interaction at 11 o'clock in the daytime. And also we also used to work in the night. It's not like that without computers. So, and the thing is, computer interaction is like this technology. Unfortunately, is not fail safe, whereas meeting in person is reasonably safe. I mean, not now, but earlier. So the one-to-one and one in group in physical proximity is any day superior and gives the facilitator and the students much more input, I would say, than this virtual thing. As just now only you said, I think, Manoj, that the common talk, like a common lecture, can be given everybody in all the colleges, 500 colleges of India, one lecture. So we don't need faculty for that. We just need certain programs already ready-made. There used to be a UGC telecast on Doordarshan for 2 hours per day for schools in villages, which was like this, somewhat like this one. When Doordarshan started, at a common lecture, because we didn't have so many teachers, maybe for schools in rural areas. So 2 hours a day, there was all subjects being taken by UGC on Doordarshan. Similarly, we can have, but the interaction, physical interaction, cannot be beaten. In any case, who is going to build online? We have to build on the side, right? So we need to have some interaction on the side at least.
Yes. Any other expert on this?
Yes. See, post-COVID world, we don't know whether it will be post or it will be COVID world forever. We don't know yet. We don't know yet. But as I see it, this is going to be a world of learners more than teachers. More and more real learners will come into play. You know, real learners will exist because the learners will search for opportunities to learn, because we don't know whether we can meet in the real world. So in the virtual world, all the real learners will be available, and teachers will have to really get into this learners world now. It's actually going to be a wonderful time, provided we get familiar with all these technologies to remain in a virtual studio. I believe that there will be something called virtual studio, which will be across colleges, or you can create your own virtual studio. I have created my own using my website, and I am in touch with some students from different parts of India whom I have never met. So we are now meeting in virtual studio to work. So I think this is something which each teacher will be able to create. I think institutional structure is going to go down, and some kind of virtual Gurukul system is going to evolve by good teachers who are really committed, who like to be with their students. For them, this is a wonderful opportunity to create what was always in ancient India called the Gurukul system of teaching and learning. You can have virtual Gurukuls, virtual student from any part of India may join your Gurukul and learn. So the institution as a physical structure and entity is going to, over a period of time, collapse if this COVID remains for some time. These big studio spaces, all these campuses, they are going to be used only for some kind of camp or COVID affected patient. That's all I can see. Who will go to the studios? Who will go to the studios? People will be afraid to go to the studios. Already Oxford and Cambridge are having problem. Students are not willing to go back to hostel. If it is happening in Oxford and Cambridge, what will happen to our college? I don't know. Only time will tell.
Yes, Dr. Anuradha.
I was going to make two slightly different points. One was a follow-up on the comment about the disappearance of the studios and physical space. I think as we reinvent how we interact with students or how they interact with us and at that time, I think it would be a bit of a missed opportunity if you don't reinvent how do students learn design. So rather than replicating lecture rooms and student spaces in the virtual world, I think it could be a missed opportunity if it didn't reinvent how students learn design and how they teach themselves design, because we think design is teachable. It's not. If you've done, you've all done design studios, and no matter how much you try to teach design is something that is learned. So there's, as Dr. Pillai said, the focus should become more on learning, not so much on delivery and teaching. In architecture, activity is very, very important. When you walk up the staircase, don't hold the handrail. We're getting SMPs saying, don't touch the handrail. Right? So we are talking about
Exactly.
we are transforming ourselves as human. So what does that mean? Let's not so easily accept it and say, yeah, we'll just go along with the flow and we'll create a wonderfully disciplined post-COVID, world and built environment and reformed human beings. But let's have a little bit, let's resist a little bit, and let's think a bit more about how we can resist that, and how we can mitigate the kind of, spaces of fear and landscapes of fear that the post-COVID world is going to create. So I just wanted to, there's slightly different ideas, but I think definitely things I think we all, as our community, we need to talk about further.
Disasters have been part of the human history. We should not be afraid of. This is not going to last forever, This is going to be a question of time, maybe 6 months, 7 months, And the history has come back. Human beings are going to come back. They are going to gather, The very genesis of the city is the, concentration. I think cities are going to disintegrate. I think it's not, History has rebound. Human beings have rebound, But this is a new message for us, that how humanity has been coping up with the changed circumstances. But I can assure you, next year all people will be in classes. But this gives us a message that there is a positivity in a situation, there is a negativity in situation. Human beings are not going to be irrelevant as a teacher, I can tell you, And teaching has to have human beings, and that's what human beings will become relevant. But the issue will be how far we will be able to make use of the technology to cope up with these kind of eventuality and future. That will be holding good, To reacting to Mr. Manoj, that you have excellent faculty, excellent students, that could be one experience. But that experience cannot be with everybody. Like what Pillai was saying, he was able to interact, But how many teachers and the total institution will be interacting? I think both we have to study the positivity and negativity depending upon the strength and infrastructure and the capability of the teacher who are willing to take it and deliver it, And ultimately we find our own solution to say, what are the best options available, how to dovetail technology as integral part of the architecture, teaching and learning, but nevertheless, human beings will become relevant, and people like Pillai and Mathur and Jagdeep Desai will be required all the time, to teach good people.
Yes. Should I?
Regarding villages and cities being irrelevant, Mahatma Gandhi had said ages ago, India lives in its villages. And he had a concept of the village republic, which means a self-sustaining republic. At that time, he said it was 5,000 population. Now the village may be more, so you might need 50,000 population. But we are still thinking of mega cities, which of course now totally that is probably gone. And
Even
imagine
smart city is
that
gone.
smart city is gone. Smart village is not yet even started, but has to be started. And there was a so-called Delhi-Mumbai corridor, whatever that meant. That means it would have been a mega city along the corridor. It means you get on at one platform and you are still in Mumbai, and still in Mumbai, then you reach Delhi, or the other way around.
Equimonopolis, that one.
Whatever it is. But
Well,
now
is one
we need our graduates to work in the villages. Not even graduates. The 3 years, the training 6-month course, which was which was
That's
just
good 2 years in village actually. That will be a wonderful idea.
programs on screen.
2 years in village. Study for 3 years and go to village, work for 2 years.
We need more lorry bakers, you know. We need more lorry. That's right.
I think we have the mixed opinions about this issue of the post-COVID. And we have seen, even we have taken the feedback of the students also for this online learning. And we have received that some teachers are really saying that now the submissions we are getting submission faster. And some teachers are also sharing that online workshop is better or online teaching is better because the interested students only can join. It is not the who is not interested can join. So this is another thing.
Right.
Yeah. And as you say,
it's a fact.
Yeah. As pointed out by Dr. Pillai, we can just think of this virtual Gurukul. That is a good system. And again, pointed out by Dr. Jeet Kumar Gupta, I think we can go for blended learning. After this post-COVID has taught us that we have to change, but we can't change completely, but we can adopt the way between. That is blended learning. The subjects which are possible to teach online, we can teach online. And the subjects like studios or other, for many problems, we are facing many problems, the teacher says. So we think of blended learning, teaching learning methods. And another issue by the students is raised as the screen time has increased because of this online learning, teaching learning method. So this is also one kind of concern for all teachers and students. So we have to see to adopt the blended teaching learning methods. Now, there are some questions from participants. We should take that. So I'll read the question by Karthikeyan, who is an educator and academician from Chennai. He asked that most of the time we feel that theory subjects are not incorporated in Design Studio. I would like to take the opinion of having 1 year long studio curriculum when students will get a chance to explore and demonstrate on the ideas. Who will take this question?
Yes.
The question is clear to experts? Yes, sir. Jagdeep, sir, can you answer this question?
Yeah. Basically, all our 5 years subjects are disjointed. They're individual. They're independent. So the studio classes may or may not have. That's why at least in Mumbai University we have got syllabus, including the final year. The panels will be the design, and there'll be one separate panel on what is known as architectural representation drawing details. So the theory subjects are just by the way. This suggestion is actually useful, that you have to integrate the theory and practice. So that 6-month course, 6-month internship should actually be the practical course. Practical internship. So that will probably help in integrating the subject of theory and the
Okay. Any other expert want to opine on this question?
Every expert wants to do it.
But I think because of time limit, we can go to next question. Yeah.
Yes.
Second question is, what are the possibilities of bringing up Gurukul systems in architectural education and practicing architect? And I think this is already addressed by Dr. Hari Mohan Pillai.
Right.
We can go to next questions. Many universities and board of studies have reduced the internship to 6 months, and they have shifted it after thesis semester. Many places it affects the quality of thesis. Looking forward the expert's opinion on the same.
No, what is quality of thesis? It is just another project. I see it just as just another project.
Another.
Okay, and in this project, I see many theses I get invited. Even today, I find fantastically presented architectural projects as theses, but none of them have water tanks. None of them have water tanks. Big campuses, but there's no water tank. The elevation has to be beautiful because you can't have something jetting out of the water tank. A student who has studied for 5 years has no answer to this question. How will you distribute water in this campus in which there are 3,000-4,000 people living or working? They have no clue. So what is thesis? Thesis is just another project. If you have done your first year project well, you should do your thesis also very well. You should put in, the inputs are very important. So if you have gone for training, that is the right time to understand at least the realities of execution of a project. The whole idea of going for a practical training is to understand the realities of execution of a project so that you don't make that mistake when you do a thesis. But when you come back and do thesis like this, where you don't even have a water tank in the building, what is the big idea of talking about what is thesis? Thesis quality is suffering. Thesis quality is always suffering because people don't think in the real world. What is happening in the real world? That is a problem.
Yes.
I think one of the things will happen because, or rather, if we seriously go into this 3+2 model of
Yes.
having a graduation after 3 years, is that the thesis will go.
Oh, exactly. It is good. Actually, it is good.
That will be the happiest.
Exactly. I fully agree with you, sir. I fully agree with you, sir.
The idea of doing a thesis for graduation, I think, is a non-starter. Nobody does thesis for graduation. Why should architecture student do a thesis for graduation? Okay, everybody does thesis at master's level. So when we talk of thesis, it should not be a project at all. If at all, the project has to
theoretical.
The project has to be a validation of the thesis.
Yes,
it
correct.
has to be a demonstration of what you are propounding. It has to be a demonstration of what is the new thing you're trying to say. So the important thing is that you got to have a new thing to say. And how can you do that when you're just a graduate? So there is, I think, a basic problem that we have. And so if we can work out a system in which there is no thesis, I think that will be a very, very good and big step forward.
I think that needs a structural change in education. And this needs to be debated, 7 semesters and 10 semesters, we were all doing this. But thesis, relevance of thesis, I think they should be debated separately, whether it should be done at the undergraduate level or not, This could be one of the very good, suggestions for architecture also.
Yeah, there is very interesting question. How to handle the challenges faced while taking online classes for sessional and studio subjects. And there are some issues of audibility. So how to handle these problems?
It's a technological issue.
This is a systemic problem. This is general. This is digital India. We have to ask for better digital connectivity. That's all. We can't do it. We have to ask for better digital connectivity.
That's right.
This will get resolved if we do it more and more. I mean, it's a demand and supply situation. If more and more people want it, it will happen.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Reliance Jio will do it for you.
Exactly.
The minister said India is coming with its own platform, that we are going to provide the best platform for this interaction.
I think there are many questions, but because of the time, we'll be not able to take the questions now. And I'll take the last question only, and we can just, I request Dr. Anuradha for the closing remarks. The last question is, any tangible breakthrough possible at this forum? The webinar unique way to get enlightened, to restructure the Nobel profession on sound foundation, focused on community welfare with possible healthy economics. The various cuts in the battlefield, IIA, COA, IID, NASA, PIATA, etc., with their radical focus and approaches, inherent pull and pushes of the professionalism. So where is the thematic? I don't know what this question is. I think he is just asking what is the role of different bodies in this changing scenario of architectural education.
I have three slogans, if you don't mind. For professionals in these times, it is work from home. For teachers, it should be teach from home, and for students, it should be learn from home. Simple. Work from home, teach from home, and learn from home. Simple. And we can't.
No, that's fine, but then we can't build from home. Otherwise, if we are all at home, then we don't need new buildings.
No, we are at home with all this.
And it will probably be much better if we don't have so many new buildings.
Yeah, exactly. Let's plant more trees.
There are any number of homeless, so we need new buildings for homeless.
We have lots of unoccupied buildings which they can occupy as they are doing.
But they are in the cities. They are in the cities. They are all in the cities. They are all speculative buildings. They are all skeletons. They're in the cities. There are ghost cities in China also.
Either we can bomb them or we can reoccupy them.
No.
Yes.
We will reinvent. All this will be reinvented. Everything will be reinvented, no doubt.
It will be reinvented, we don't have to be very pessimist. I think the role of the regulatory body now have to change, They can't be policing. They have to be supporters. They have to be enabler, They have to be bodies which are, engaged in research and development, and promoting profession, not controlling profession. They should have best practices. They should interact globally, bring best of the option in profession and education, and see, the education standard of this country get upgraded, not closing or somebody, reducing their norms, policing, inspecting every time. I think
there can't be any inspection of physical facilities now. There can't be any inspection of physical.
They are not only looking at the quality. I think their role has to be positive and promoter of good institutions rather than controller and doing all these kind of negative things.
Okay. Now I request Dr. Anuradha for closing remarks.
So thank you, Dr. Madhura, for curating a wonderful panel. I think we are only starting to ask some important questions. We don't really have, conclusive answers. But that's the entire point of a panel discussion, isn't it? To raise questions and not, come up with final answers. So I think, I was interested to see, the panel kind of take this beyond the kind of the normal kind of questions that we ask about in terms of relationship between the academy and the industry. And I think we've been able to do that. My opening comment was about creating a generation of graduates who push the boundary of architecture, or what architecture is or can be, or what education is or can do. How do we foster the new generation of critical thinkers and doers? Are we able to create a new generation of graduates who balance technical competence and social ethics, who balance business acumen with social relevance and fit, as well as adaptability, as we've had to do now with the post-COVID, with the COVID situation? So I think we've gone well beyond this question about whether graduates are, ready to. Our academies, creating graduates are ready to fit in and serve. So I'm really happy that we've been able to do that collectively as a community. Couple of things I wanted to touch upon, I think, and it's not really a summary, because I think it's very hard to summarize a really rich debate that we've undertaken over the last couple of hours. One thing that I wanted to talk about was this idea of the real and the virtual project, which Professor Pillai mentioned at the outset. I think he's right in saying that yes, a lot of what we teach in schools is not. They're not real projects, but at the same time, the point is that the academy cannot simulate. Nothing can simulate the field, the real world. It's either real or it's not. You cannot simulate. At the point that that most of the knowledge in any field, whether it's medicine, or it's even how to teach in an architecture school is learned on the field, as is in an architecture profession. So it's important, but at the same time, I agree with the fact that it's important to have haptic knowledge, and a project-based learning is actually quite important. So it's so that everything is not theoretical. But I also go to say, because having worked in a lot of universities over a couple of decades, it's become clear that a lot of theoretical knowledge that students graduate with is not good enough either. So when you say that their knowledge is theoretical, it's not even good theoretical or up-to-date critical knowledge. So there's a problem even with teaching things in a theoretical manner, or even teaching theory subjects. So there's a problem, at the academic, across all academic institutions. The other point I wanted to make is that Dr. Pillai talked about the fact that these are dream projects, and while I agree that projects have to be more, I think students could immensely gain from live projects, taking part of, and project-based learning, which is more integrated, where you integrate technology, construction, structures, that there's a horizontal integration. But at the same time, are we really teaching students to dream? They are not really dreaming either. They are fantasy projects, but they're not dreaming of a better world. And I think as academic institutions, we do have the responsibility of teaching students to dream. And what we are not, perhaps, a lot of times, a lot of discussions around education and architecture is about architecture. It is not about education. The purpose of education is to learn how to think and how to act in accordance, and to know how to think and be aware of what your position is, how you're acting. So I think a lot of times our discussions on education and architecture is about the core competencies or the discipline competencies. In architecture, it should be about misuse of technology, training, thesis, project. But how do you conduct your life? Are you able to control, determine your path in your career, about what kind of a contribution you want to make to society? If you want to make and in what way? Is it a financial contribution to society? Is it a social contribution? We're not focusing on that, on the core question of education. It's always about education of an architect, but not education. So I think, in our future debates, we have to bring focus back to what is the function of education, and can we educate? And like we said, can design be taught? Is it about learning, or is it about teaching? But the core question is that we'll have to come back, and I think we've made a really good start here as a panel, is to talk about these topics in a very kind of a comprehensive manner. The final question, the final point, I think the panel and the moderator, Dr. Madhura, has done really well in raising is this idea of the pandemic, and the pandemic opportunism. That a lot of people are getting this opportunism. One thing is the pandemic opportunism, that you're able to do things that would not normally be possible in a different situation. The second is fitting in and obedience. I think we have to be, we have to inculcate, we have to take it on as academics and as practitioners, that we cannot just take a position of accepting and just obedience and acceptance, that we have to think beyond the kind of effects. We have to think very carefully about the kind of society we are going to create, the kind of opportunities that we shouldn't miss in enhancing the kind of society we have. So it's not really a closing comment, because I think it's very hard to summarize all the really sharp comments that have been made by all our panelists, but I'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I thank all the participants, all the experts, and I think in experts also we were having many renowned professionals and academicians. So I want to thank all of them for attending then, and so I apologize for this technical difficulty and for starting the session late. So thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.